So as the situation has developed, we've had even more clarity. Our contacts also with the Ministry of the Interior, the Ministry for External Relations in Spain, and indeed our continuing contacts with the Spanish government at a national level in the region have confirmed that the entry point from Gibraltar to Spain will not be considered the entry into Andalucia, but the entry into Spain, which was the view that we had initially taken. Juanma Moreno told me that he was actually seeking the opposite. He was seeking to liaise with Exteriores and the Interior to ensure that it was dealt with as a perimeter entry point. But in fact, the decision has been made that entry into Andalucia through the crossing point at La Linea will not be considered an entry from one region to another, but an international entry into Spain, and therefore will continue in the usual way, with the position being once you are in Spain, once you are in Andalusia, you will of course be subject to the same constraints that apply to any individual who would be seeking to travel around the geography of Andalusia. And I ask people to be very alive to what those restrictions will be, because one of the things that is happening is that even within provinces, there are different towns being locked up at different times as the prevalence of the virus is changing. So you will have seen that even in the Cádiz province, there are some towns which are locked in and their perimeter is not subject to entry or exit without the reasons that you will have seen other relevant ones: working, going to the doctor, or some other overwhelmingly important reason.
So was Juanma Moreno seeking further restrictions at the frontier itself?
So what the president of the junta told me was that he was seeking to align the position that he was taking with the Ministry for the Interior and the Ministry for the Exterior. And the decision has been made that I think not just affecting Gibraltar, but also affecting the entry point from Portugal into Huelva and Andalusia in that direction, that those international entries will be permitted subject to the national restrictions and the regional restrictions once you are in the region of Andalusia.
In basic terms, what do people need to know when crossing into Spain and back into Gibraltar?
Well, look, I think the most important thing to note is the high prevalence of the COVID-19 virus in Spain. In Andalusia and in Cádiz in particular, they are below the national average, but it's still high. It's higher than in Gibraltar. In Gibraltar, the numbers are starting to be reduced. I'd like to think as a result of the measures that we've taken, which have been proportionate and designed to try and reduce the numbers. But look, this can change because we've got people coming back from midterm breaks in Spain, and we might see the virus imported once again. And so the most important thing is to be alive to that and to ensure that you follow all the rules of personal sanitation to protect yourself and your family from getting the virus, and to protect the rest of Gibraltar from having the virus brought in by you. Alternatively, please also ensure that you are very aware of what the relevant rules, wherever it is that you are going in Spain, will be. I mean, people might not stay just in Cádiz province. People may go into Malaga province. That sounds like a distance, but in fact, once you're in Estepona, you're in Malaga province. So you need to know if there are going to be different rules in the provinces, and you need to understand that if you're going to wander into a particular town or village, you've checked out whether that town or village is a place you can go. You might find that when you turn up, you're not allowed into that town or village, and you may have to change your plans.
And in terms of those who have been perhaps rushing back to Gibraltar, given what they perceive the uncertainty over the frontier, maybe after a midterm break, what is the government's advice for them?
So the government was always very clear that leaving Andalusia was not going to be the problem. Returning to Gibraltar was not going to be the problem. But you might be in a town or city where leaving might be a problem. So I know that there are some people, for example, who were in Cordoba, who wanted to now move before the restriction around Cordoba kicked in, and they wanted to get themselves therefore back to Gibraltar. The important message that we're giving is if you've been away in Spain over the midterm break for an extended period, you could be carrying the virus. The important thing for you and your family is to know that that is the case so that you can take the necessary measures. Please, if you're coming back to Gibraltar, having been on a break in Spain or indeed in the United Kingdom or elsewhere, contact 200 41818 and take a test.
Earlier this year, we saw restrictions that allowed only certain people to cross, such as cross-frontier workers and Spanish residents with proof of documentation required. Can you reassure people that that is not the case now, and that people can cross the frontier for non-essential reasons as long as they respect the national and regional regulations once they're in Spain?
So the latest information that we have suggests that that is exactly the case, that people will be able to cross the frontier, whether or not they're crossing to work, whether or not they're crossing for an essential reason like healthcare, etc., that they will be able to cross the frontier into Spain. And once they are in Spain, in the region of Andalucia, they will be subject to whatever restrictions apply in that region, and indeed in the particular province, Cádiz, which is where we enter, or in the particular town, La Línea, for example, which might be applicable and people should make themselves familiar with.
What is the level of communication between Gibraltar and the Junta de Andalucía and between Gibraltar and the Spanish central government? And is Gibraltar preparing for any further imminent changes?
So if there were one thing that we might say is a silver lining in 2020, it's that the Gibraltar administration is in contact with the civil administration of the Junta de Andalucía and with the central administration of Spain, the national government of Spain, on issues relating to public health, and that contact has been very fluid. Politically, we have also been in contact, and we continue to be directly in contact with all of those ministries at an administrative level and at a political level, and I would say that that is a change of the position as it might have been in the past. It's almost as if the one positive that we could take from this pandemic, it's that it's brought sanity to the political and administrative relationship between Gibraltar and Spain, at least in relation to the issue of COVID-19.